I would like to thank the sponsors of this beautiful, lovely exhibit, and which include Marlene and Warren Miller, John Woodward, Louise Clark, John Carbon, Dorothy and Ashley Brilliant, and thank you so much for sponsoring this. I'd also like to acknowledge Warren Miller, Bill Burtness, Eleanor Van Cott, our board members, and if I'm missing someone, please wave to me. I think I have Bill Burtness, gotcha, thanks. Eleanor? Thanks. I'd like to express my gratitude and respect for Marlene Miller, her dedication to the museum and her hard work making this beautiful exhibit become a reality, and it really is stunning. And now I'd like to introduce Marlene and lead us through the wonderful program that she has planned. Marlene Miller was born and raised and educated in Austria, and her family immigrated to Toronto, Canada, where she married and started a career in banking. In 1961, she and her former husband came to Santa Barbara, when she continued into the banking business until she opened the Arlington Gallery, specializing in 19th and 20th century American and European art. Since 1995, she has been a private dealer specializing in the work of Edward Bereen and Carl Oscar Borg. She was a founding member and art dealer of the Fine Art Dealers Association, and with her husband Warren, a charter member of the Wildling Art Museum, now in Solvang. Marlene has served a total of 12 years as a trustee at the Santa Barbara Historical Museum. At that time it was the Historical Society. And the last president considered the expert, she is considered the expert on the work of Edward Bereen. Marlene is the curator of the museum for the Edward Bereen's collection and has lectured and contributed to the publication about Bereen, including the 2006 Noticias on the Bereen's early years. The present exhibition and work of Ray Strong is the 7th show that she has guest curated for the museum. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Marlene Miller.
As you probably know, there are a lot of galleries and museums in town who are having venues like the Ray Strong exhibits with different themes. And this is all in conjunction with the Ray Strong project, which is initiated by Sullivan Goss and American Gallery. And they, in order to support the recording of his accomplishments into a book and into a catalog resume. And it's an ongoing thing, and Jeremy TESSMER, who is the editor, will be talking about that project later on. So I won't go any further on that. This is one of those exhibitions, and I have chosen the theme, Views of Santa Barbara County. So all these paintings, there are a couple, we don't know where it is, but they seem to be like they would be Santa Barbara County, and this is one of them. So if anybody knows where that is, we'd love to get the input. It's interesting though, when I was putting this show together, I noticed that most of these places are still untouched. That's the way they were when they were painted. With the exception of this little gem here, which is the Orea Ranch, and that was painted in 1978, but from a photograph. Ray painted it from a photograph that was done in 1968. And then it had to make room for the 101 freeway, so it doesn't look like that anymore. So that freeway goes right through there, and that's where the oil spill is now too. Yeah, and the other one is the second one over here on the right of me, left of you. And that is where ExxonMobil has moved in. This was painted before they moved into the two canyons, the Las Flores and the other one called, what's it called? Paloma Ranch in the Las Flores Canyon. And we're lucky to have some of these pieces here. And it's the people from the ranch. And Elizabeth, I see you. Thank you for being here. And they've loaned us all the paintings because Ray used to go and take his pupils up to the ranch, to La Paloma Ranch, and they painted a lot up there. And I'm sure that some of the people who are going to be speaking later, they will be talking about this. So I'll just go on. This will be a short, informal talk because some people will have a lot to say, and I will talk about it a little bit later again. But we'll start with Arturo TELLO, who together with Ray founded the Oak Group. So please welcome Arturo TELLO.
Good evening. My name is Arturo TELLO, and it's such an honor to be here and address you today. I'm grateful to Marlene for inviting me. One other high honor that she gave me in relation to the Ray Strong is to curate his show at the Wilding Museum when Ray was 98. And so I know what you went through to get this one together, and thank you for all your hard work. I was obviously very fortunate to meet Ray when I was 25 and he was 75, exactly 50 years difference, plus a month. And I wasn't lucky enough to be his student. I had graduated from San Jose State University when I met him, and he was not formally teaching anymore. He was just going around with a group of students, mostly female students. Yes, I joined them for only one time, and they pretty quick decided that they didn't want another man around. They liked the intimacy with Ray, and the thing with Ray is, like, any time you were with him, there was an intimate moment. I know that many, many times I wish I had had either a video recording or just a tape recorder to capture anything that he said, because it was always deep and poetic, and always it had some resonance to it that was to stay with me for a long time. While this is an honor, I really was at a loss as to what to speak about. And so you might hear something that is just, for me, a little embarrassing, and for you, a little too colorful, maybe. But it's a good, I figure that the reason why they want me here is to tell you something that is, you know, a unique experience with Ray. And I had many experiences. Some, the best ones were going out painting with him, that painting in the corner over there. It was one of the earlier times that we went painting, and I remember we went a couple of times to the same location. The first time Donald Archer came along, and we were just finding back roads off of East Camino Cielo. I could not drive there now. I mean, I couldn't find it probably. He was always the driver, which it was a funny thing. You know, when I first met him, again, I was about 25, and his wife, Betty, was very protective of Ray. And so she would make me sign a note saying that I would not sue him. He will be driving, but I will not sue him if he gets distracted and gets in a little accident. And we did that a few times until I wrote this poem saying, you know, just a perpetual kind of release for Ray. I said that it was such an honor to be with him that even if it cost me my life, I would never come back and sue him. So after that, she kind of laughed and gave up. Yeah, anyway, so the painting trips were wonderful. I've been watching some of the tapes, old tapes that both I and Ellen Easton, one of his, is Ellen here by the way? I thought she went, okay. That she lent me, and she has a few tapes, and I was watching Ray talking, he got the Pearl Chase Award, and he said something that he always repeated, and it strikes me that that is one of the themes in his life, which is that he was very grateful for the O group and the friendship. But what he enjoyed the most was to watch us work together, to watch us put together our invitations. At the time we were hand-tipping the postcards, the cards. We had to get a lot of photographs and then tip them. And so we would have work parties, and he would love to see Meredith Abbott and Glenna Hartman and Baba Geiger and myself and Thomas Van Stein and all these people, all these artists you hear about around town, and we were together then, just, you know, licking stamps and putting them in envelopes and this and that. And he loved to come. He could not help during the hanging of the shows, but he would love to watch us do it. And he would just cheer us on. One of the really gems of this people, and I should say I'm very grateful to the book project, because a lot of stuff is going to come up. And there's another book that is going to come up also by a man, Mark Holmpaul, and he discovered one of his, and shared with me an early a yearbook from Ray Strong, and in his senior year, he is pictured in the back of the yearbook, jumping up like this. He was a cheerleader for the school, and he continued throughout his life to be a cheerleader for group efforts. And I was telling you about this award. That's what he said. He said one of the things he enjoyed was to see the camaraderie and the people working together to put together these shows. And he kept going till he was 100 years old to the shows and see us hang them. At that time, the story I'm going to tell you about, this happened in Marin County. This year we celebrated our 18th anniversary of having a show there, and Ray went there the first 15 or so. And the whole involvement of the O Group in Marin County has been, gosh, almost as important as it's been here. We've raised a lot of money to protect land in Marin County. And this is all Ray's legacy. It goes on. I mean, $1 million here and $1 million there. Pretty soon that's a lot of money that has bought conservation easements for a lot of land that we all love to see as open space and as working farms. And it goes back to Ray's strong love of the land and love of us, the painters. And, you know, just starting that idea of giving 50% to the land and 50% to the organizations that protect and fight to keep these places. Anyway, so where we would stay when we went to Marin County would be the home of my friend and Ray's friend, Dr. Michael Witt. And they have a bathroom that accommodates wheelchairs, because both the son and now the wife use a wheelchair. And it was my job that time to get in the shower with Ray and help him out, get him ready to look nice for the show. And I figured the easiest thing to do was to just take my shower at the same time. So I helped him in and sat him down and stripped and went to help out, and I hear him say, "Oh!" And I say, "Ray, what?" "Gosh! It's like an acorn." And I go, "What?" And then I look, and he said, "Well, I'm sure it comes out like a great oak to do the job." I go, "Okay, Ray, thank you." And so I'm not telling you that story just to embarrass me or to embarrass you. I'm telling you because that is the thing about Ray. He would see your shortcomings, but would see your potential. And always he would say, give you a good critique and say, oh, now make that great big canvas, and you know, he would give you some advice. He would push you towards your best effort. And anyway, you know, another honor that I had, it was just a few days ago that we had the 7th or 8th anniversary of the passing of Glenna Hartman. And Glenna Hartman obviously loved Ray, and Ray loved Glenna very much. And it was my honor to write her obituary for the Independent. And it was, you know, it was Memorial Day when she passed. And I was thinking about her, and I decided to go reread what I had written. And I mentioned Ray a lot on that, because Ray would say this story about Velázquez, he would always, a painter, a Spanish painter, that he always would point to be one of our, you know, there's a long line that Ray would point out of painters that we belong to, Michael and myself and others. And it goes back to Velázquez, and the story goes that Rembrandt would be asked many times, well, do you think, are you the best painter in the world? And Rembrandt would say, alas, no. There's a Spaniard that can paint a room full of air. And I was just telling Michael, remarking on that beautiful job that Ray did on that painting there, that veil of fog on top of that, those ridges, those hills. Such a beautiful way with atmosphere. And the thing about Ray, he had in his teaching, he had this lecture or this class or this concept that would be called the brick and the veil. The brick meaning the solidity of something. You know, he would be thinking about plate tectonics, for God's sakes, and about, you know, the real rooted mountains. But he would also be thinking about the air between you and the view. Anyway, in Glenna's memorial, I wrote these lines that apply very much to Ray. I said, people touch our lives. Some we love, some we take for granted. They're all unique, interesting, and important. Are we less, a little poorer when we lose them? I think not. Paradoxically, I think the fullness of our love for them comes to the surface, sometimes from a depth we did not suspect. I think the blessing of our relationship remains, and if we allow it, it flowers in our painting, music, or other chosen mode of self-expression. In our loss, there is an opportunity to realize that we are left enriched and inspired to contribute to those that we will eventually leave behind. So Ray left almost 9 years ago. Yeah, next month it'll be 9 years. But he has not gone. Look at this, and look at the books that are going to come out, and look at the many painters that he touched. There's many friends that I have on Facebook, and whenever I post something that mentions Ray, they all jump in, and they have memories of him. So there's that thing of synergy that Ray celebrated, the work of many people being the sum total bigger than the individual parts. He believed in that. He believed in collaboration. And he's still there, collaborating in all our creative endeavors. And I'm forever grateful to have met him. And I love him very much. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce to you a man who was called his adopted painting son. And he's going to talk a little bit more about his experiences, and that's Michael Drury. So please welcome Michael.
Well, I was going to talk about Ray, but I think I'm just going to talk about myself. And really, in a way, that's the string for me, because if you don't mind, maybe some of you have heard this before, how I met Ray Strong. Would you like to hear the story? Sure. It really is. I think it has everything to do with what Arturo was talking about in terms of his generosity of spirit. So I was making really bad paintings. This is from about 1963. I went to France, and I had one of those bombshell moments. I spent a lot of time at the art museum here, but going into the Jeu de Paume, which was the old Impressionist museum at the bottom of the Champs-Élysées, it was so stunning to me that I had to leave. I only made it into the first gallery on the right. I had to sit out in little wire chairs and kind of collect my thoughts, because I was struck by the fact that these little paintings, I think it was the collection of one of the doctors that the Impressionists traded medical work for. And I realized that these wonderful little Sicilies and Monets and Pissarros were made by human beings. They weren't made by a god or a goddess somewhere. They were actually made by people who took brushes and paint and made this painting. And I went across the river the next morning, went to the Sennelier shop, and I bought my first paint box that was my own. Before that, I was using my father's paint box. So I set myself up with palette and all the stuff you need to make paintings. I proceeded to make really bad paintings. But they were heartfelt, but they were really not good. So fast forward a few years, and now it's 1970. I started working at the Hollister Ranch, and I had sort of run out my string in terms of how I could get better. I didn't know how to get better. I'd done everything I could. I was painting with a man named Ward Walkup, who's a good painter also, and we both sort of felt the same. He was going to go to South Africa with his soon-to-be wife and surf for the next 20 years. I was going to stay on the ranch, and so one of these things happened. I was downtown at the library, and it was in the old library where there was that mezzanine between the Children's Library, and the Faulkner Gallery, and that outdoor courtyard. And along the mezzanine were these A-frame easels, and these paintings. They were all no bigger than this and many smaller. And there was a show by Ray Strong called Along the Way. And I didn't know who Ray Strong was. I certainly knew the dioramas in the museum, but I never put a name, certainly not a face to it. So I saw these paintings, and I had the same feeling I'd felt 5 years earlier in the Jeu de Paume, that this is it, this is what I want to do, this is exactly how I want to paint. Because I could tell it was a direct and skillful response to what he was looking at. These were paintings of Oregon and Northern California. There may have been some paintings of Santa Barbara County, because by that time he'd been there, I think, 5 years doing the dioramas in the Bird Hall. So I went down the street, and Tom Bortolazzo, who I often credit, and I tell him also, he had a frame shop, I think where the travel company is down on Anapamu. And I walked in there, and I was probably 2 feet off the ground. I was buzzing. And I said, I've just seen the most amazing thing. I've seen these paintings by a man named Ray Strong. He goes, oh, Ray, he's a fantastic guy. You need to call him up. Oh, you don't call up a god, you just, anyway, hope for divine intervention. So he said, he's in the phone book, he's a wonderful man, you should call him. Well, I didn't. So I was working on the ranch, and I guess about maybe the middle of December, I realized that I had run out my string, and my wife at the time said, you should just call Mr. Strong. So I called Mr. Strong, and he answered the phone, this booming voice, and I told him that I was a painter, that I was running into trouble. I really didn't know how to get better, and I wondered if he gave classes, and he said, well, I do give classes. They're on Thursdays, And I think that was all those women, there's like 5 or 6 or more women. And I said, well, that doesn't do me any good because I live on a ranch north of Gaviota. And he goes, oh, where's that? And I go, it's the Hollister Ranch. And there was this little pause, and he went, well, perhaps I could come out there and paint. Of course, it was private property then, and so I said, well, you certainly can. So we made a date. So I got off work, and I went home, and I was covered in dust and diesel, and waited for Ray to come from the gate. And here comes this big brown and orange VW bus. And this man gets out. And I think what people who haven't met Ray have to understand is this man, when he got out of a vehicle, he unfolded. Because he was huge. I mean, I don't know, what is he, 6'5"? Would you say 6'4", 6'5"?
6'4".
6'4", and a tall 6'4" for that. I always felt like I was talking to an eminence, Anyway, this man gets out of this VW van and starts walking down my driveway, and I walk out to meet him. I introduce myself, and he comes and meets Signa, my wife at the time, and I get my little paint box and my stick easel and a cardboard box with a string handle. And we load everything in, a couple of canvases, which I thought were huge, but were this big, into his van, and we proceed to go up the mountain. And the day was sort of steely. It wasn't exactly overcast, but there was a steely quality to the light, and it was cold, and there was definitely a front coming. And we went all the way to the east ridge above Agua Canyon. So all the canyons on the ranch, except for Long Canyon, are perpendicular to the coast. So you're looking down these canyons. So I'm setting up my easel, and Ray's, of course, got a French easel, and he's sitting down, and he's laying out his colors, and he's looking, and he's talking the whole time he's doing this, and he's mixing these halftones. And I'm looking at him mixing these halftones, and he's just nailing everything about the country right in blobs of paint. So he's taking the colors that are laid out of the tube, and then he's mixing them into these tones, and I'm just looking, I'm going, ooh, and I'm going, So he starts to paint. He does this beautiful painting, and on the way up, I should mention this. We talked about lessons. I would come to town maybe twice a month and take lessons at his studio on Saturdays, and I pushed myself forward a little bit that way. So we talked about that, and he named a price that was certainly doable, even though I was making $300 a month as a ranch hand. And so we painted till almost dark, and I made a terrible painting. Ray I don't know whatever happened to the painting, but it was a knockout, looking out to sea with Santa Rosa and San Miguel Islands, looking up at the mouth of the channel with all this beautiful silver wind pattern. I mean, I knew I was in the presence of a master, because he built this thing right in front of me on a canvas about as big as this. So we're driving down Long Canyon on the way back to my house. And I'm sure we're making small talk. Then there's silence because we're both tired. We painted for a couple hours. And as I say, he's a big man, and his hands were huge. They were big farm hands, just gigantic hands. And he's driving, and all of a sudden I feel his hand clamp on my knee. Bang! He goes, Michael, let's forget this lesson stuff. Why don't you and I just start painting together? And I don't know what I said. To this day, it makes me emotional, because I realized that, number one, he saw something in me that I didn't see. And number two, he was willing to make that effort, taking on a pretty green painter and bringing him along on these trips he'd take. 2 or 3 times a week he'd go places and paint, whether it was up the coast or over the hill. I have no idea what I said. I must have stammered something, because that's how it began for me in December of 1970. And when I say I'm making this lecture about myself, I mean only that it made me, it showed me a path that, as Ray said, I would be, if I chose to be a painter, I would be happy, but I would be impoverished. And it's turned out pretty much that way. But when you have this example, and you make the choice, I was going to go back to school and become a PhD in literature, and it went completely south. And I ended up taking courses at Creative Studies, and Hank Pitcher and I are best friends, and John Comer. We all sort of formed this little collective, and it's all about all of us in the Oak Group painting as well as we can every time we go paint. And Ray, it's not really about the product so much, although it's good to do a good painting. It's about the process of learning how the land worked. When he talks about if you want to really paint a hill, walk up that hill with a bucket of water, and you'll really feel the hill. And he's not being poetic. He would really like you to put a knapsack on with some weight to it and walk up this hill that you're going to paint, because it gives you the idea of the strength and volume. That big golden hill of Las Flores is a unique painting in that all the shadows are on the flanks, or the vertical flanks of the mountain, and up to the left, and that big hill is all halftones and umbers, and it's an extraordinary painting. But you can feel the weight and muscle of that hill. So the only other thing I'll say about Ray's generosity is that April 21st is my birthday. So April of 1971, I get a call from Ray saying that there's a box for me at Benwick Art Supply. Do y'all remember Chuck Benwick? Yeah. Any of you? He was a wonderful guy. He had a very, very good art store. And I said, well, I didn't order anything. He said, well, all I know is that Chuck called me and there's a box for you there. So I went. He had his, at the time he had his store in 5 Point Shopping Center. So I go in and I say, Mr. Benwick, he says, oh yeah, wait a minute. And goes in the back and he pulls out a box about this big. And I go, what is this? He goes, well, open it. So I open it up and it's a French easel. And he had gotten a good price because he was wholesaling it, and he sold it to Ray, who gave it to me. And it's an easel that's fallen off of cliffs. But I've had to take the Starbuck Minikin and get put back together, and of course I will never ever get rid of it. But that was the next push in terms of feeling a value from someone that I didn't feel in myself, only because I was really trying hard to be a good painter. And I think Ray, all of us who have come under his wing, as Arturo said, he makes you want, he sees something in you don't see. He sees not an acorn but an oak tree. And it's very, very important in terms of how we look at his paintings here. The generosity of that man is evident in every single painting in this room. And I'm forever grateful to him, and all of us who knew him love him. And John and I went up there maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks before he passed away, up to Kern County, up along Three Rivers. And we had this wonderful afternoon of painting and bathing in the river. It was ice cold, and Ray was on the bank going, ah, yelling at us and stuff. And then it came time to put him into bed, and the fire department came because they needed to put a new mattress on. They got one of these really great thick mattresses to stop bed sores. So they did the rolly over and did that, and then they were changing his sheets. And so I had Ray here, and my hand disappeared into his hand. And his head is right next to me, and he goes, Michael, there's a lot of good painting out there to do, and you guys are going to have to do it. I went, I said, we'll do our best. And I think we all have. Thank you very much.
It's becoming pretty evident what Ray was all about, isn't it? Yeah. And thank you, Michael. It's my turn now to talk a little bit about Ray as one of his dealers. And back in the 80s, in 82 actually, he and Betty came to the gallery, which was at the Arlington Plaza at that time. They introduced themselves. I didn't know them, and they introduced themselves and said if I would be interested in representing his work. And I said, well, we can certainly talk about that. And so we ended up having a show with Donald Archer, the first show at the Arlington Gallery in the Arlington Plaza. And it was a big success. Dan, I have pictures, and there is an artist in there that I can't figure out. It's a woman, and if I heard it, I would know, so I'm going to show it to some of you guys. Maybe you can help me identify. When I moved down to El Paseo in 1994, I got to know them a little bit better. They came in, and when Betty called up, said, we'd like to come and visit, the first thing I did, I got all the paintings off the floor and hid them, because when he came through that door, as they said before, he was 6'4", and he was a huge man, huge arms, huge hands. He would come through that door. He had bad knees, so he had a cane in his hand. Oh, he would yell, and the cane would be up in the air. Look at all these paintings, and he started going back and forth and pointing at the paintings. My heart would sometimes sink. I think, oh my God, he's going to ruin it. We never did, but. He was funny, and he always wanted to hug you, and of course you almost got crushed. He didn't mean to, but he was just that kind of a guy. I didn't tell you when I went to see his studio, but that's okay, that's another story. I was going to not tell you a story, but I'm going to tell it to you because Arturo was so brave. I'm standing in front of a painting called Path of Light, and I'll tell you the story. Ingrid, my sister, is here and she can verify that. In 1991, my sister Ingrid and I moved down to Santa Paula temporarily to take care of our parents who were both ill with cancer. And we took turns in coming up to keep the gallery open. She came one day and I went the next day. And on one of those days when I was up here, I sold this painting to a company in Ventura, a very well-known company. And I brought it back to Santa Paula, and I was going to put a new frame on it because I thought this was kind of a chintzy frame. And so I put on a nice little hand-carved 22-karat gold frame, and I was going to deliver the painting. So pretty soon my dad was still alive, my dad said, I'd like to come along. And we had a company, a friend who was actually, he was very ill with leukemia, and he was on a lot of drugs, and he was coming along. And then my sister said, no, I'm coming along too, because I need to take care of those two. And you're driving. So I had a station wagon at that time. The car was full, and where do I put the painting? So I wrapped the painting up in heavy plastic, and I tied it up on the roof onto the... Don't laugh, Sybil. I tied it very tightly up on the roof of the carrier, and off we went on 126 towards Ventura. And pretty soon out of the corner of my eye, I see something flap. And I said out loud, something is flapping, maybe the painting is loose. And Raymond, the guy with the leukemia, said very nonchalantly, oh yeah, I saw it fly off way back when. I can't even tell you how I felt. I mean, can you imagine? This is on canvas. This is not the rugged masonite that he used. Yeah. I mean, I was just, I can't even tell you. So I said, okay, back in the car, I'm going to retrace it. And Highway 126 has only 2 off-ramps, and they are very far apart. So off we went, and everybody peeled their eyes and see where the paintings. I had visions of this painting being in thousands of pieces with the trucks running over. I mean, I couldn't imagine. So off I went. I finally found the off-ramp. We went all the way back. We were driving slowly, and I'm looking. We were both looking. I see something in front of me in the ditch. So I slowed down, sure enough. There is the painting in all its glory, face up. The only thing that was broken was the frame. Not one scratch on it. It still does this way. This is what happened. So I picked up the painting. My dad got mad. Why did you do it? Why did you tie it on top? I said, why do you think? Because you're sitting here. Well, anyway, I took the painting to the owners. And I said, I can't leave it with you because I lost it on the freeway and I have to replace the frame. She said, I don't like that frame. I just like a simple little frame. So I went back and I changed it to the original frame. And this painting has been shown in about 10 different shows. It's a very popular painting. But that's the story of the path of light. So I must live right, I guess. Well, anyway, as I said, Jeremy's going to talk some about the book. But I was going to just say about Ray. He used to say, if you want to paint a tide pool, wait it. I mean, that was his, yeah, and he would sit, they would tell me, the students would tell me, they go painting together and he would sit there and they would all be painting, they have their easels up and they'd be painting and he's still sitting there and looking, and I said, why aren't you painting, Ray? And he said, well, you got to feel the earth, and he would go and grab it, and you know, that's the kind of person he was. He was just unbelievable to have known him. I feel so lucky. But he was always undervaluing his own work. I mean, he used to just practically give his paintings away. And then I said, Ray, you've got to raise your prices. He got all nervous, and Betty would say, oh, Marlene, I love you. I can pay bills now. You know? Yeah. And I think I was the first one who actually raised the prices. And he got used to it, but he never charged much when he was alive. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. And he painted as he lived, organic, down to earth, and honest. He once told me I could clean his paintings with soap and water. Now, does that sound like Ray? I said, are you kidding, with soap and water? And he said, yes, you can do that with my paintings. I said, well, I never did it, but I bet it would have worked. Have you ever tried it?
Mm-hmm. I use soap and cold water, that's it.
Oh.
A little bit out of soap and cold water.
But only his paintings. Yours too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see Mr. Comer there. Hi.
Take right off.
Thanks. Well, he was a humble giant, admired, respected, and loved, and I'm very pleased to have known him. And I'm very happy to see that he's being properly recognized with the full illustrated publication. And Jeremy TESSMER is going to talk some more about that. And I thank you, and after that we will have a little Q&A. So, Jeremy, please welcome.
I would be the youngest of the Ray Strong acolytes, I suppose. And I'm here this evening actually because of Michael Drury. If you go into art dealing, I am the gallery director, vintage curator, exhibition designer at Sullivan Goss. And if you go into art dealing, you go in because there's a romantic in you, there's an optimist. And that optimist and romantic is very quickly squashed by the commercial side of the art business. So anyway, I was hired by Frank Goss almost 14 years ago. And at the time, we represented Michael Drury. And Michael was, by that time, selling his canvases for thousands of dollars. I was 20-something. He was older than I was. And I did a little exhibition announcement for Michael. We hung his show. It was a very beautiful show. And we had a ramp up the side of Sullivan Goss, and he came one day pushing Ray Strong up the side ramp to Sullivan Goss. Do you remember this?
I do.
And he pushed him around the gallery, and it was like some little tiny piece of the romantic and optimist that had started out in art dealing went, oh, okay, that's happening, and it's the 21st century, and here we are in a commercial gallery, and a very successful artist is pushing a man around like it's, the analogy I would make is like a 6-year-old on PTA night showing his parents his drawings on the wall. And Ray was giving him critiques. And I mean, to this day, I think of that moment. And as I got deeper into the Sullivan Goss and California art history culture, I began to actually do more reading. And one day I went to the Archives of American Art website and I read Paul Karlstrom's interview, which is completely transcribed, of Ray Strong. And I went, oh, Ray's not a local artist. Ray's a California artist. He's kind of a big deal, actually. And then that process just kept happening over and over for years and years. Every time I learned something new about Ray, I would say, if people knew more about Ray Strong, they'd think more of him as an artist. So one day, about 2 years ago, in July of 2013, I leaned over to the desk to Frank Goss and I said, you know, every time I learn something new about Ray Strong, I think somebody ought to do a book. And it's a terrible idea to give Frank Goss an idea. Because his spirit animal is a beaver. He will begin to, you say, let's build a dam, he'll start building the dam right then and there. And the next morning I woke up and there were spreadsheets. Frank loves spreadsheets. There was a spreadsheet about who should work on the book, which writers we should get, how much they should be paid, how long each section should be, what the timeline for the project is. We are now beyond that timeline. But each section was plotted out, and I'm now going to have to work on the book because I said somebody should do a book. So Frank initially led the research effort. We compiled all kinds of information, and a lot of people were very helpful. ARTURO and Michael Drury and Chris Chapman, Larry Iwerks, Marlene Miller, Ellen Easton. Everybody kind of came together and provided me with documents, and we grew to, Frank also loves binders. We had this enormous shelf, like this big, of primary source documents on Ray. And we sent out copies to Michael Witt. We sent out a copy to a man named Don Haggerty. Don Haggerty is the main scholar on Maynard Dixon. This is an interesting little aside. You talk about the chain from Velázquez. I can't quite go back that far, but Maynard Dixon was a young boy when he sent his portfolio to Remington. And Remington said, you got the goods, kid, go ahead and be an artist. And so then Maynard Dixon became the guy who took the cowboy western image into the 20th century. And then Maynard Dixon went to Ray and said, hey kid, you got the goods, you really should continue to be an artist. And then Ray told others. And then I watched Michael push Ray along, and I thought, okay, that's something that deserves recognition. So the essays are now completed. We have Don Haggerty, we have Michael Witt. Nancy Moray, who is the most published California art historian, has written the foreword, which begins, I believe, with the line, if greatness in the man imparts to his art, then Ray Strong was destined to be a great artist. And that's because from the time he was like 12 years old, he was a leader and a communitarian. And so in addition to founding the Art Students League of San Francisco, he also founded one of the first co-ops in the city of San Francisco. He founded the first mural society. It goes on. And the man took landscape painting from the Romantic tradition to the environmental tradition in his lifetime. His brother, Edward, was the president of Berkeley eventually, and Ray was steeped in biology, botany, geology from his time. His middle name is Stanford because his father went to Stanford. He was a self-educated man, but a well-educated man. So now the book is due to come out fairly soon. We are soliciting the last of the images. It will be 254 pages. It will have essays on his early life in Oregon. It will have essays on his move to the Bay Area. Some of the things you may not know, Ray was best friends with Maynard Dixon and Dorothea Lange, who took that iconic photograph of the Depression-era farm mother with her 2 children. He's right in that milieu. He did murals for the Bohemian Club in San Francisco. taught at the College of Marin, almost built a monument to peace with Frank Lloyd Wright. And so we're going to have essays on that. We're going to have an essay on his commitment to muralism. Dennis Power, who was the director of the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History, will write about his time here in Santa Barbara. And then Michael Witt has written his essays about Ray Strong the man. And my hope is that this Ray Strong project has 3 parts. There are 12 exhibitions, and there is a book, and there is an online catalog raisonné. And my hope is that Ray goes from being the most influential artist in the history of Santa Barbara, and that's what he is today. We'll go from that position to being acknowledged as one of the major 20th century California painters. The book should spur interest. The catalog raisonné should enable other curators to not have to work as hard as poor Marlene and Ann Peterson and Stacey and all these curators who've curated around the city. So I'm thrilled to be part of this. It's kind of that chain of honor Arturo was reflecting on. And
Russ, now, do you have any questions?
You know, he must have sold every painting that he ever painted, because I've seen so many.
Yeah, well, he was very prolific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he painted all over the world.
Well, his early paintings, and you can attest to that, they were, I don't know, have you seen any? The museum, Santa Barbara Museum of Art has a couple.
Yes, and I had one done in Sicily. Yeah.
Well, beautiful paintings. And then when he was, you were saying he was friends with Maynard Dixon. They went painting together, and I actually had that painting that they were painting when they were together in the desert. And Maynard said to him, Strong, make up your mind. Are you going to be a California painter or are you going to be a Southwest painter? And he thought a while and he said, I think I will just be a California painter. And that's when he went the other direction. Yeah. Well, yeah, he was very, when he used to come to the gallery just looking at other artists' work, he got so excited, and this is why I say he would, you know, his cane was all over and talking about the painting, but he was very kind-hearted and always found the good in everybody. He was a great guy. Great guy. Any other questions?
Marlene?
Yeah.
Can I say something?
You may.
Come
up.
Well, I don't have to. I can bellow. It's about the catalog raisonné. Any of you know anybody in the Bay Area, Palo Alto particularly? I went up with Ray a couple of times in the 70s to the Los Robles Gallery.
Right.
And those paintings, he sold out every time he had a show up there, every 2 or 3 years. And nobody knows where they are. I mean, there's many, many paintings that have disappeared, like Maynard Dixon's work is the same. So if any of you know anybody or have family in the Bay Area, they know people, a catalog raisonné is being birthed at the moment, and any addition to that would be most welcome.
Yeah. Yeah, anybody who has paintings that are not recorded, we would like to know about it. You would like to know about it.
I would very much like to know about it. That's, just briefly, I met the author of the Winslow Homer catalog raisonné. That's a 5-volume set. It's taken her 25 years to put that together, and she's standing on the back of one of the former directors of the Whitney Museum, who put in another 20 years. We have databases and we have each other, and so I've started it, but you and your friends and acquaintances and descendants will finish it. I'm young enough, but I don't know, Ray probably painted 3,000 paintings. And right now I have 500 of them recorded. So there are a lot to find. Please, if you have any, theraystrongprojects.com, you can contact us about the catalog raisonné.
Spread the word. Any other questions? Okay, let's go and have some fun. There's wine out there.